Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
You have found the spot. Thanks for joining us on Fantasy Sports Daily. Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers here, powered by fantasyguru.com as we reach midweek here on the program. And I was thinking about this right before the show started, that all the cool shows are known by acronyms, quick hitters, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess our acronym for Fantasy Sports Daily is FSD. The problem with acronyms is that quite often at this stage in life, Ray, they're taken. FSD may, but I looked up, as far as I can tell, Ray, the only thing we're truly competing with is a small little computer/automobile company called Tesla.
Other than that,
they have full self-driving. But I think Fantasy Sports Daily can beat full self-driving. People are going to call that robot driving. They're not going to call it FSD. So I think we're in the clear.
That's too long. Yeah, you're right. I did not know that. I know that Tesla does a lot of interesting things. I know that there's a Tesla charging station about half a mile from my house. I know that people around here, because California is such a different spot, that people live in 2-bedroom apartments and drive a $75,000 Tesla. It's an interesting scenario that plays out when you talk about Teslas in the Bay Area.
Yeah, so I think we're going to steal the FSD acronym immediately.
Okay.
Thankfully the guy who runs Tesla, he's pretty relaxed and he lets things slide. He doesn't like to cause a ruckus, so we should be cool there. And like I said, it's going to be called autopilot. Nobody's going to call it FSD. That's not cool. You want to say, no, my robot's driving the car. Which I love the idea. Like literally, Ray, there may be a point in the near future where you and I can be like flying down the highway and hands off the wheels, and we're doing this program together. Like Jeff Mans does what does he do? Coffee thing.
Yeah.
But he still has to like keep the phone situated, the coffee in his hand, drive the car. 5 years, Jeff ain't going to have to do that. Like he'll be able to relax, have the coffee in the hand, and just have the Tesla or whatever vehicle it is drive them all around the Phoenix area.
Quite the life to do that, actually. You know what? It's so funny. You say things like that, and it's like, oh, and then you like remember when we were kids, they had the Jetsons, and oh, you were going to go to the moon. Yeah, right. Yeah, all these kind of things. And you're right. Technology moves at a breakneck pace. I think about the fact that my grandparents, legitimately used to get the milk bottles delivered and have the guy bring giant ice cubes to the house to keep things cold. So the world changes fast, Kyle.
Yeah, I remember the milk delivery slightly. There are still businesses out here who do that. But the ice thing, Ray, that's ancient, almost as ancient and long ago as when Carson Wentz was viable in fantasy football. Yes, indeed. We're going to lead with Carson Wentz, I guess. And Martavis, Bryant. It's like 2018 all over again on FSD here at Fantasy Guru. Here's what we've got on the program. Yes, indeed. I do not kid. Carson Wentz and Martavis Bryant are back in our lives, so we'll tell you what that means for both the Rams and the Cowboys, respectively. We'll also get you some other news and notes, a bit of injury news coming out of Tuesday's practices, but not all that much. Got to talk about the tight end position. Of course, over the weekend, we lost Dallas Goedert. I was looking at the position, and I'm in a league where I own Goedert, and I was kind of looking through the options. What should I do? Who should I pick up? How much should I spend? I think a lot of you might be going through that, but in general, the position as I was scrolling through it is a little bit better at tight end than we thought. Also, it's a Wednesday, so we'll take a look at some Week 10 spreads and totals. And then before we get out of here, a little NBA talk with Justin Fensterman, which if you noticed yesterday at fantasyguru.com, there was no NBA DFS write-up. That is because the NBA had a grand total of 0 games on Election Day. I think it was Election Day for a few people out there. I literally, Ray, I don't know if you had anything locally. I literally went to the polling booth, and there was one single item that you had to give a yes or no vote on, and that was it, which I can't recall anything like under 10 or 20 items. But this was awesome. One item, and I was out in like 10 seconds. It was beautiful.
Yeah, we've got, here's mine. I do it from home. We've got one item on ours too. One. It's about sewer systems and flooding and stuff. And
you got to pay for that, Ray. You guys fix those people. They don't like to pay for that stuff, but you need to. Ours was like maybe a half-cent sales tax to help the fire department. So I said, the fire trucks cost like $700,000.
Yeah.
So give them a half cent for every dollar.
Our fix the sewers is $10 a month forever. So it's a little more expensive for us here, Kyle. But I think it'll probably pass you, right?
Believe me, Ray, you don't want your sewage backing up.
No, you don't. Yeah. That's true.
It's worth the $120 a month, because if it starts to back up, then you're talking like upwards of $1,000 a year. So $120 a year. Yeah.
And if it starts to back up, we're technically a lot of the Bay Area is below sea level, right? It's a lot of landfill and stuff too. So if it backs up, like houses are going to get it. So it'll probably pass, Kyle.
Yeah, and plus to build sewage from Northern California and to shoot it into Southern California like you guys like to do to your neighbors to the south, you need to invest in that.
Is that what we do? Okay.
Yeah, you do. You hate Southern California. Come on.
I do.
You know, Cal guys are like snooty. That's what I hear.
I love San Diego.
Yeah.
LA.
So one little spot.
Disneyland and San Diego. There you go. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll talk some NBA with Justin. I mentioned no games last night. Tonight's like a huge slate. We're lucky to get Justin on board because he is probably feverishly working through things. 14 games. I think it's 14. Yeah, 14 games coming your way in the NBA tonight. So we'll talk some DFS, some season-long stuff with Justin. As always, promo code, you see it there at the bottom, FSD20. 20% off of everything at fantasyguru.com. You got any recent write-ups, Ray? Anything that has been popping up on the website?
Yeah. To answer your question, I've got a baseball article over at the site. It's a free one. Everyone can go read it. Kind of just reviewing the World Series, some of the amazing numbers and data from the Rangers and the Diamondbacks. A little talk about Gold Gloves there, an ode to Nelson Cruz and his retirement. I was actually on with Jeff Manns on the One Man's Opinion podcast. So that'll be available starting today all over the place. I was on last night with him. Kind of talked a little bit about you and I, actually, Kyle. You should probably listen to it, about how we first started
behind my back discussing me with Jeff Manns for the public to enjoy. Thank you. That's great.
I was nice. Jeff wasn't. No, I'm just kidding. But so people can check that out. And then One Man's Opinion is the name of that podcast. And then I'll be having my 15,000 word article comes out every Thursday. So that'll be out tomorrow morning right before the show begins. And then Coffin Corner on Fridays, where we have a lot of fun with numbers.
So that's the rundown of Ray. I'm looking at the website right now. I guess we have some MAC football tonight. So if you're into college football, yes, indeed, we have a DFS breakdown for that slate. So kudos to our college football crew for having that out. And also, there is a preview of something called the Butterfield Bermuda Championship in golf. The Butterfield Bermuda Championship. It sounds fun. So check it out if you're into golf. There's something for you to get prepped for. We, of course, are mainly talking the biggies, the footballs, the basketballs, the baseball, the hockey. We begin, of course, with some football. And Ray has noted Carson Wentz, Martavis Bryant back with us. It's kind of wild with Carson Wentz. I remember this is almost exactly 6 years ago. Yeah, December 10th of 2017. You and I were doing a show that Sunday night on Sirius XM radio. And that evening, the Rams and the Eagles were combatants. This is before the Rams opened the beautiful new stadium there, the SoFi Stadium. This is when they were playing at the Coliseum. And I recall this game so vividly, Ray, because while you and I were on air, Carson Wentz was leading the Eagles into the end zone, and he was making a run into the end zone and like diving for the end zone and got clobbered, blew his knee out, all this stuff. And that was in the midst of what would have been an MVP season. Yeah. Like Wentz was going to win the MVP that year. He was at 33 touchdown passes to 7 picks with like 3-4 games left to go. Yeah, he was going to end up with
2.
Yeah, I mean, they were flying high. This is the year that, by the way, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Because what happened? Nick Foles took over. And Ray, ever since that moment, when Carson Wentz goes down in L.A., disaster. I mean, his career's fallen off a cliff. He was like the best quarterback in football up until that moment. The injury happens in L.A. The last 5-6 years have been just ugly and multiple teams and Didn't last in Philadelphia, of course. Now we get the news yesterday. He's back to the scene of the crime. He is joining the LA Rams. And what caught me off guard, Ray, is like the Rams are still telling us that Matthew Stafford's going to be back in week 11.
Right.
They're on a bye this week. They're telling us if that's the case, I don't truly understand why Carson Wentz is coming back to this team.
Yeah, if that's the case, if he truly is healthy, Matthew Stafford, this is a move that the Rams should have made in July just to have Carson Wentz around, right? I mean, it's odd because we've talked to how much have we spent talking time-wise this year about the quarterback position and the fact that it's just junk. It's pretty surprising that Carson Wentz is just sitting on the street. I mean, I know, like you said, his career has not been good or anything like that since he's had some moments, but he's had a lot of struggles too. Are there really 60 better quarterbacks than Carson Wentz out there? Yeah. I mean, maybe 75, however many, 80, 90, whatever the heck. No. But it is an odd signing. It's more, I think, of a name signing, though, to be fair, Rippon looked awful. I mean, he's, wasn't capable of running an offense. At least Carson Wentz can run an offense, even if he doesn't run it very well.
Wentz, to me, Ray, it doesn't really matter except for this. If Stafford, and I guess this thumb is something you can play through, but don't be surprised if at some point they just bag it. That's kind of what I'm sensing here, Ray, is that the Rams, sure, he'll be back, but it's going to be very easy to knock him out again or just for him to say, forget this. But the key here is now, Ray, if you're a Cup or a Nakua owner, you actually have hope. We talked about this on Monday, how ugly it looked with Rippon. Cup has been very quiet in the last 3 weeks. Nakua's had one good game in the last 4, I guess you could say. I do feel that whether it's Stafford or Wentz, the Cup owner and the Nakua owner are in a smoother and better spot for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's what, to the point I was saying, that Wentz can run an offense. I mean, and again, whether there'll be mistakes, trying to force balls that he shouldn't into zones he shouldn't, all that, okay. But he will throw the ball to his guys. And, he's capable of getting the ball to his guys. And I think that's a huge piece of importance. The Rams gave up last year in the second half. I think they're giving up this year too. This has been a catastrophic fail after the success they had. Catastrophic fail. Jeff Mans has talked about this too. He's like, why? Everyone wants to fire Bill Belichick, who's, going to the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest coaches of all time. No one talks about firing Sean McVay, whose team is in the toilet for 2 years. I mean, it's crazy.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they won a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew when they were building for that Super Bowl, they were piling up a lot of salary cap hell. And they knew that when they did it. And so, Ray, they won the title. They got the brand new stadium. They became a thing again.
Yep.
With the understanding this might be the penalty after that Super Bowl. I feel that this was all understood by McVay and the front office, that this would be the price to pay. I get it. They're not good. I don't think they expected to be good because of how they structured the contracts and the guys they went after and the willingness to trade draft picks. Like, they went all in, Ray. And so a lot of coaches might be fired with offenses like this, with records like this. But I feel there was a mutual understanding 2-3 years ago that this is, we'll pay for this a bit later. Mm-hmm. McVay will walk away, I bet, before the Rams have to fire him, if it ever reaches that point.
Look, I'm not a Bill Belichick apologist. I think he's gruff and blah, 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 blah. But I just find it fascinating because it's a growing thing. Like, you're seeing the reports out there that if they don't win this week, they might fire Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches ever, period. Just period. Whatever you think about the guy or whatever. He's 10-16 since the start of last season. Sean McVay's 8-18.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick's going to the Hall of Fame. He's got 300 victories. He's got all these Super Bowl championships. Let's fire him, but not the wonder kid whose team is way worse. And I agree with you. The Rams knew what they were doing. They did it, and they, in essence, sold their soul to the devil to win. And okay. I mean, I'm sure the fan base is okay with it, I guess, because they're not calling for the firing of the guy that they're not going anywhere either. That's a problem too.
You'd have to have a fan base in LA.
Oh, that's fair too. Good call.
Let's trash Southern California a bit more.
Again, yeah, woo! But I don't know. I mean, I think to return to your point before I derailed it, the Puka and Cup thing, Stafford is huge. If it's not Stafford, Wentz is important, right? Because Rippon and these things they're doing clearly it's not working, but they need to get the semblance of a rushing attack back. Kyron Williams should return. Maybe that helps a little bit, though. If I'm not mistaken, he only had one game of 60 rushing yards this season as himself. It was a huge game, but this team is just not very good. And all we can hope is that, the quarterback play improves to the point where we can use those wideouts again with confidence.
I know Wentz is a bigger name and he's a quarterback, so on and so forth. So that one kind of led the way. But the more important signing, Ray, might be Martavis Bryant. And honestly, I don't know that either Wentz or Bryant are doing anything for fantasy owners the rest of the year. But I say more important because this Cowboys team, Ray, certainly a playoff contender. If things were to truly break right and the defense becomes a thing, they could maybe compete for an NFC title. Now, we've been saying that for 2 decades, so I'll just add another year on to saying Cowboys could win it. But Bryant's interesting, Ray, because again, he was thrown out of the league for like drug issues or whatever, so he had to be reinstated, all this. He kind of blew it with Pittsburgh. But Ray, he is going to a Cowboys team that really doesn't have any receivers behind CeeDee Lamb. Like Michael Gallup, Lamb's at 57 catches. Michael Gallup is 22. Brandon Cooks is 17. There's actually a spot here, Ray, if Martavis Bryant has anything left where he could perhaps make a bit of an impact for this team.
Yeah, and you look at it, Gallup, since his knee issue, whatever, just hasn't developed as they expected, obviously. Brandon Cooks has had a nice career, but he's a little guy. Turpin is tiny. I mean, they could use some size, and that's something Bryant has. And theoretically, right, we're always in the fantasy space, we're hoping / wanting him to be a thing every week. And, he's a big athletic guy that can high point a football and all that. And we'll see. It's tough to, and I don't know the answer to this, Kyle. Maybe do you remember anyone that's disappeared for years at the wide receiver position and come back?
the only guy, Ray, that pops up is Josh Gordon.
Oh, geez. I knew you were going.
Here's the thing. We haven't said Josh Gordon yet in the week and a half we've been doing this show, so we had to get him in. But the thing with Gordon, Ray, is as much time as he missed, I don't think he ever missed more than Martavis Bryant has not played football in 5 years. 5. That's wild. And here's the other thing. Martavis Bryant, who people know that name, and he was drafted constantly in the mid-2010s. Ray, he never had more than 50 catches, ever. So, I get what the Cowboys are doing. They need somebody, but to be throwing a dart on a guy who's been out of the league 5 years is kind of nutso, I think. It's pure Jerry Jones with that decision.
Incoming, hamstring pull. Yeah, it's pure. You said it very well. Pure Jerry Jones.
Anybody? Can you win with CeeDee Lamb being your only receiver? That's it.
I mean, their number 2 receivers, Jake Ferguson, at this point, right? And I think
you watch that game on Sunday, Ray. He's like the number 2 guy. If you got Jake Ferguson at tight end, I love the spot that you're in right now.
I'm surprised because when the season started, he was out there and he was running around, but he wasn't necessarily running a bunch of routes, wasn't getting a bunch of targets. He was really touchdown dependent. But like you said, the last game, if you watch it, Dak Prescott, anytime there was a problem, Ferguson. Anytime I was moving around, Ferguson. Anytime a play broke down, Ferguson. Like he is their number 2 guy. Can you win doing that? Sure. Can you win long-term with one wideout and your secondary guy? You can. I mean, the Ravens win all the time, and they've never. When the Ravens had when have they had one wideout? Like, I mean, you can. It's extremely difficult, though.
It's kind of confusing to me that you can have all and CeeDee Lamb's, wide receiver 1, top 10 guy, 57 catches, but you'd have to combine Cooks and Gallup to get to 39 catches. You want one of those guys by themselves at 39 catches, and it just has not happened for the Cowboys. Boys are going to be hosting the Giants this week. We'll get into point spreads later, but I'll tell you this. They are favored by 16.5 against the New York Giants. And the crazy thing, Ray, the thing about that, you're favored by 16.5. The game total is only 38.5. So what's that mean? The score is going to be like 28-12 or like 27-15?
Wow.
Well, even worse, 27-11. I mean, I get it, but man, 16.5, not a number you see in NFL circles. Staying with tight end, we mentioned Ferguson there. Ray, I was wondering as I kind of scoured one of my league's waiver wires, I needed a a Dallas Goedert replacement. And this was in a 12-teamer, so there were actually plenty of options. And as I was scrolling the position, I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe this position is doing better than I thought in 2023. Certainly this past weekend was a big one for tight ends. We had like 3 or 4 different guys with 2 tight ends, or with 2 touchdowns, I should say. We had 5 tight ends, maybe 6, who registered more than 20 points in a PPR setup. And so I looked a little deeper thus far, and this was just one league, the league I was looking at. It's a PPR league. 5 tight ends are already over 100 points, which kind of caught me off guard. And in effect, I think Darren Waller's at 79 points, and in this league, that made him the 12th best tight end. But in effect, Ray, we've got a dozen guys. Every single tight end one is sitting at like 80 points in a PPR setup, which roughly speaking is 9 to 10 points, depending on if you played 9 games or 8 games with the bye week. I'm surprised by that. And some of the tight end twos, Ray, are guys like Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, David Njoku, Trey McBride's in there. Like, I feel kind of good about those guys moving forward. Maybe, oh, maybe, let me throw this out. We end the season with like 15 dudes averaging like 9 points a week, which would be better than I'd ever expect at this position.
I do find it, you're right. And I find it interesting too, that like tight ends 6 to 10, they're like separated by like 4 points. And then there's another group of like 10 guys that are all separated by like 10 points. So there's clearly the groupings that we thought would occur in the preseason, right? There's the top group, then there's another group, then there's another group. But you're right in general that I think if we could have gone back 3 months and said, there's going to be 13 tight ends this year scoring 10 points a week. Okay, like we'd be like, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I think we're clearly trending toward that zone. I think a lot of it has to do with some poor quarterback play, right? It's a lot easier to have a read to the tight end than it is to, figure out defensive backfields and what's going on down the field. So maybe there's some of that. There's some safety valve stuff going on. There's some teams like the Cowboys we just talked about that don't really have secondary options in the receiving game out wide. So there's a lot of reasons for it, but I think it's really interesting because I have George Kittle. I'm looking at my dynasty league right now. I have George Kittle, and he's tight end 6. So, was he drafted as like fourth off the board? So he's a little disappointing, but he's fine. Here are his point totals, and he's 6th. And this is the problem you run into with the tight end position still, even with the good overall numbers. 5, 6, 16, 2, 28, 1, 13, 24. He's all over the place. Half the time he's played 5, 6, 2, 1. Half his games he's had less than 6.1 points. And I wrote about this in the Coffin Corner piece last week at fantasyguru.com. And he's number 6. And I think that's the real issue. Even these guys at the top that are averaging 10 points a week, how many of them are 10, 10, 10 every week? Like if you have Evan Ingram, you're in a great spot because it's the same thing every week. But even the guys at the top, there's still a lot of volatility week to week.
Well, and you mentioned that volatility. That's why whenever I was looking to replace Goedert, and I say this for anybody, and I realize some of you had to do this last night. Some might be doing it tonight. But Ray, anybody I pick up, because Goedert is, 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer. We just don't know. We'll have to see how the bone heals. But anybody I pick up, Ray, I've got to understand that it's not just a week 10 play. Like you've got to give all the, and I say this in the preseason, but it even plays now, that anybody you pick up, whether it's Tyler Higbee or Gerald Everett or David Njoku or Trey McBride, you can still grab him. It's not like you can pick them up on November 8th and then here comes November 12th and they're terrible. Oh God, they were so bad on Sunday. Oh, I'm going to drop this guy now, move to the next guy. Any tight end you're picking up, you got to give them 2 to 3 weeks here. I'd say 3 weeks even. In the regular, in September, I say, hey, you draft a guy, give him September. Mm-hmm. See what you're getting in September. If it's still bad, move on. But, like a Kittle thing, and again, it goes to all these tight ends. It's boom, 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 boom. I wouldn't be playing the matchup game just yet. I mean, that's something people look at is, well, who's got a defense that for whatever reason just doesn't cover the tight end. Sometimes, I think more in the playoffs, you can do that if you're having issues at tight end. But I think anybody you'd pick up off the waiver wire this week to replace Goedert, Ray, give them a little bit of leash. Don't expect, hey, it's got to be good in week 10 or else I'm moving to the next guy. Yeah,
Cole Kmet, who's top 5 at the tight end position in week 6 and 7, had 3 points total. 3. Dallas Goedert, top 10. his first 3 weeks of the season, first 3 weeks, 17 points. And these guys are top 10. So even the guys like we're saying, it wasn't just George Kittle. I just used him as an instrument here of explanation, but this is how it is. So I totally agree with you. The streaming of tight ends can work. It can. I think it's very difficult. It's not something I would recommend. If you're in a zone where, the guy you're picking up is Kylan Granson, well, then you stream. But if it's David Njoku or Trey McBride or even like a guy like Cade Otton, like give those guys some time. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And streaming is fine if you got a bye week with a tight end. That's fine to kind of, because it's going to be a 1 week play for most of you. So that's a perfect time to stream. But specifically to replacing a guy like Goddard, you kind of want to think a little more for the next month and who you can trust and who you can maybe get a few points from. So just an interesting thing with tight end, better than we might have thought in 2023. Quick rundown of some injury news, and it's actually not too bad for the middle of the week. Now it can turn worse. We got the game on Thursday, the Bears and the Panthers. I know all of you are like constantly on SeatGeek looking for seats to this game. It's like, I get to see maybe Bryce Young against Justin Fields. How cool is this? Or, wow, it's going to be Chuba Hubbard against a returning Khalil Herbert. Like, this is like DJ Moore revenge game. Like, all this excitement going on. About all of our injury news is with that game. Khalil Herbert looks like he's going to give it a go. Justin Fields was limited on Tuesday. We'll see what the report says for Wednesday, but it kind of sounds like he's good to go. For the Panthers, DJ Chark is missing practice if you care with an elbow. But that Herbert thing and that Fields thing, I said this yesterday, Ray. For me specifically, I'm in a league where it's like, I need Khalil Herbert. He's going into my starting lineup immediately. How about Fields? We may have a better read tomorrow when we get together, but if he's a go and he's out there and he's starting, that's been a guy that we've said, okay, QB1, I'll make him my starter. Is he that guy immediately upon his return, if indeed it takes place tomorrow night against the Panthers?
I think the answer to that for most people is probably yes. Mahomes is out. Tua is out. Hurts is out. Stafford's out. Like, that's a lot of firepower guys that are on bye this week. And then you talk about, some of the crappy, Aiden O'Connells and Zach Wilsons of the world, and you start picking these things off. And it's hard not to look at Fields and say, to answer your question, that it's not a yes, Kyle, that Fields should start. And, we've seen the offense be effective at times with the rookie under center for the Bears. We've talked about that. And, I think that obviously Fields went to the shelf with those 2 games of 4 touchdown passes, the final 2 full games he played, looking very well, very good as a passer. He runs all the time, that athleticism there. I mean, if Josh Dobbs is the top 10 quarterback, and he is, isn't Justin Fields in the first game back got to be looked at in the same sense? I think he does.
Yeah, and on the other side, Bryce Young's been a mess this year. Fields, to me, Ray, even with a bum thumb, and I wouldn't just say, oh, he's back, he's fine. I kind of worry about how he'll play with this thumb. He's not the most accurate QB anyway. But Fields, I think, probably rises to that QB1 level for this week. You mentioned some of the QBs who are out, some of the offenses who are out. As we kind of move ahead to the remainder of the week, we have a total of 14 games in the NFL this weekend for Week 10. It's a lot like last week, which means low scores are expected everywhere. Of the 14 games, as of now, Vegas has 6 of the 14 with game totals under 40. And one of them is Carolina-Chicago. That's a 39. Bears are actually favored by 4. Green Bay and Pittsburgh, 38.5. Tennessee and Tampa, 38. Cleveland and Baltimore, 37.5. The Giants and the Cowboys, 38.5. And the Jets and the Raiders, which is Sunday Night Football. Jets and the Raiders is a 36. 36, right?
Well, this is more Zach Wilson for you. Like you talk about, every time you turn up, the NFL is in love with Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron Rodgers was set to be in primetime every week, but now that Rodgers is out, we get a lot of Zach Wilson.
This is the worst. This is just me off the top of my head, Ray. This is the worst primetime week of NFL action. Thursday, Carolina and Chicago. Nobody's interested in that, right? Mm-hmm. No one is. Sunday morning, let's call it, that's an international series. Colts and Patriots. Nah, unless it's Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, which it ain't. Who cares?
Right.
Sunday night, the Jets and the Raiders. What is that? Aiden O'Connell versus Zach Wilson?
That's what you got, Kyle.
And then Denver-Buffalo in Buffalo on Monday night. The most exciting part of the primetime schedule this week is hopefully we just get live shots of Bills fans slamming each other through flaming tables. Like, that is the only way I'm going to sit there and watch 3.5 hours of the Bills and the Broncos next Monday.
It doesn't sound that off, Kyle. Yeah, that's rough. And you never know how a season's going to play out, right? Like, sometimes it could look very different, obviously, when the schedule's being set. But that definitely turned out to be a pretty rough crew here in Week 10.
There are decent games. I don't want to make it all ugly. San Francisco at Jacksonville. With the way the 49ers have been playing lately, I don't want to call that a must-win.
Agreed.
They need a victory on the road at Jacksonville. They're actually favored by 3 in that game. I think the Cleveland-Baltimore game, everybody's going hog wild about the Ravens. I feel that team is one thing at home, which they are this week, and very different on the road. They're home against Cleveland. Let's see it, man. You should bury this team, right? Cleveland hasn't shown anything offensively. Defense is pretty good. They're favored by 6. I mean, there's a lot of hype on the Ravens right now. Is it too much? I feel it's still too much hype, Ray. I've said this when we talk about Lamar Jackson, we talk about these receivers, these running backs. To me, this is the same thing we've always had with the Ravens. They're a good team, but come playoff time, can they win the big games? And in years past, they have not. Can they get Lamar Jackson to the finish line? People making these outlandish, hey, Ravens, best team in the AFC, Super Bowl contender. People have said that every single year about the Ravens, and they've always been good. They get there. But can they get there with Jackson? Can they win in the postseason? That's been the problem with that team.
You sound like Jeff Manns right there, Kyle.
That's
Jeff Manns. Yeah, this team isn't really any different than it was last year. Everyone's all excited and changed OC and everything. At the end of the day, it's kind of the same team. And, we talked about this. Lamar Jackson's got one game of 240 passing yards. He's not running as much as he has in the past, production-wise. What wide receiver has this team established this year? Well, it was Zay Flowers, who all of a sudden has turned into a pumpkin the last couple of weeks. He's vanished from the offense. The Browns have a good defense. Lamar Jackson fumbles at least once every game. So there's a lot. I get it. I understand it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns won that football game. And even if the Ravens win it, if it's ugly. And I think that, they've always got Justin Tucker in their back pocket. But I don't think they're the juggernaut, to your point, that some people think they are.
I think they'll look good this week. I think they'll win by, they'll cover that 6. I don't think they'll get much of a challenge. I still, Deshaun Watson, I don't care.
He hasn't looked very good.
Yeah, I mean, even last week he had his best game and it was not good. I mean, and maybe it's a tight shoulder. You got to warm it up. Like early on, he was misfiring constantly with his football throws. So we'll see that. That's in the early window. Biggest game in terms of the point total, Detroit and the Chargers. That game is in LA. 48.5 is the number there. Houston, Cincinnati, decent game. Bengals are favored by 6.5 as the home team. That number is 48. And then kind of a playoff battle. Saints, Vikings. New Orleans is at Minnesota, and the visiting Saints are actually the favorite in that game. I was a little surprised to see that. They are a 2.5-point pick over Minnesota. As for the Packers and Steelers, Pittsburgh favored by 3.5. So that's a bit of an early look at what we've got coming up for Week 10. Again, if you jump into Discord over at fantasyguru.com and you're kind of looking for a betting edge, a wagering edge, all of our personalities and analysts are willing to help there. So do take advantage of that at fantasyguru.com. We will shift away from the football and hit you with a little basketball on this Wednesday. Now, the plan is usually Tuesdays. We'll talk some hoops. But yesterday, there was no action. There was nothing in the NBA. So Justin Fensterman, who's just getting rolling with the start of a new year, we thought we'd give him a full day off, kind of let him rest and relax because there are no more days off for a while. I mean, even Christmas, there's no days off in the NBA. So Justin is with us today to talk not only what we have seen in the first couple of weeks in the NBA, but also what we're getting ready for tonight in DFS. We got a giant 14-game slate. You're not sweating yet, Justin, as you get ready for this 14-game slate. You taking it easy still this morning.
Yeah, but the storm is coming. But you, Kyle, you've known me for a lot of years, and you know how I feel about no action. So I'm so happy tonight where we'll all get plenty of action in this 14-gamer we have. Right, Ray?
Yeah.
Oh,
14
love
games.
the action. Yeah.
Woo! 14 games. That's exciting. Well, let's start with that, Justin, on the DFS. Okay, 14 games and like I guess for a pro like yourself, you like know what to do. Where are you gonna? For those who aren't pros at this, but they enjoy playing DFS. You know, they like throwing down on big slate. How do you start? Where do you begin with when you're looking at 14 games and trying to figure out what the hell to do? Are there game stacks specifically to tonight that you kind of favor and kind of lets you focus, say, on those games to start your build?
Absolutely. Where I go, it's weird for DFS. It's not really that weird, but looking at what those game totals are, I look at more game totals than team totals. Other analysts look at the specific team totals, but because I look at the game totals, I can also look at the potential pace as well. So I'm looking for what I perceive to be a fast-paced game, or if there's a team that moves relatively slow, but they're facing a team that moves at lightning speed, they're going to have more possessions than we're used to seeing. So I'm going to try to get with those teams. But I look for those high game totals. And for tonight, you got the Charlotte Hornets there with the Wizards. You've also got Indiana and Utah. These teams move at lightning speed. 240s in those game totals for a reason. That's where I'm looking to stack, especially, Kyle, with Charlotte being a good example because Terry Rozier, who takes a lot of shots, he is not going to be playing. So now the shots are going to be divided a little bit more. Everybody's going to be focusing on LaMelo Ball, obviously, as usage goes up. But some of these other guard forwards that they have, and even a guy like PJ Washington, are going to be taking a lot more shots, and we're going to have to take advantage of that.
Justin, John Morant's dealing with a 25-game suspension and all that stuff from, guns and all the shenanigans and all that. The Memphis Grizzlies are 1-6 to start the year. Is that kind of what you expected? What's going on with the Grizzlies?
I didn't expect it to be that bad. If anything, I thought that them having Marcus Smart would at least hold them up defensively. But guys, over the last few years, Marcus Smart, he hasn't been the same kind of defender. I don't know if it's age. I don't know if it's motivation or anything like that. He's just not that shutdown perimeter defender. He's decent, but we're used to him being one of the tops in the game for many, many years. But the problem is when it comes to the offense, and he has helped out offensively, he's not explosive like John Morant. It's like back in the 2000s. You take Allen Iverson out of the Sixers, and it's going to slow them down. They just can't cause defenders to collapse on any of their other guys, Memphis. Their shooting isn't bad. And when you're a team that moves at a fast pace but isn't shooting well and doesn't play defense, that's a recipe for disaster. If you're going to move at this very quick pace and you're not going to defend and it's going to be a race to 110, 115 every game, you got to be able to shoot better. And this team doesn't do that. And I don't even know, guys, if John Morant coming back, I don't even know if that's going to ultimately help them be able to compete in the West. It'll surely give them a bump. And I know it's early and I'm trying not to overreact. They look horrible. I can't stand watching them.
The team that you watch all the time, they're your team, if I'm not mistaken, Justin, New York Knicks.
I try to actually, just so everybody knows, as much as I love the Knicks, I actually keep track of what teams I watch on what night. So I can make sure I have even or somewhat even exposure to watching at least a half of every single team.
Yeah, this guy watches the Orlando Magic.
Dude, this year it's been fun watching the Orlando Magic, but I suffered through the previous years. But that's the only way, guys. That's how we're learning this process. We got to watch the games.
Let's talk about the Knicks. And you look at Julius Randle. I'm on the outside here, Justin. I'm not a hoops guy or anything. I look at Julius Randle and I see a double-double. I see him averaging about 5 assists. These numbers look really good. Then I look at a 30% field goal percentage, and I'm like, whoa. Talk to us about what's going on with Julius Randle in this Knicks offense.
Julius Randle is hindering all of our Knicks options. The guy holds on to the ball too much. It's so frustrating because I've had to eat so much crow when the Knicks had success last year, not because of Julius Randle necessarily in the postseason, but people say he's a number 2 guy. He's a leader. He's not a leader. He's not a number 2 guy. He gets the ball and goes in the corner. Basic fundamental mistake that we all learned playing PALCYO basketball. We all learned that you got to stay out of the corner because you're going to get trapped every time. And he's worse with it, Ray. He takes those shots from the corner. This guy doesn't see a place he doesn't like to shoot from on the floor. You've got other guys. The Knicks brought in other scorers like a Dante DiVincenzo who, when fed, has proven himself. So that's the problem with Julius Randle. And it's not only that he takes a lot of shots and he's shooting so poorly from the field, he holds on to the ball too long. Possession being 24 seconds, when you get the rebound, the clock down to 15, and that's all you have. This guy's holding on to the ball for over 50%, it seems like, and the Knicks play very slow, and that's not going to help them. If they were run and gun, it wouldn't be as problematic. But we can't trust a lot of these Knicks options, even Jalen Brunson to an extent, because Randle is holding on to the ball for too long. He's shooting too much, and he's shooting very poorly, and it's taken the Knicks out of games.
Knicks are going to be a popular spot tonight for eyeballs. I don't know about DFS, but for eyeballs, ESPN has coverage of their game from Madison Square Garden against the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. So 7 games of Wembanyama. The highlights are fun. He always gives us some wild-looking highlight almost every night. We've probably seen 3 or 4 really good games. I think he's been a hit for the most part. It's not smooth sailing every game. I was looking at the DFS price specific tonight. It's still like sub 9. I think like 8,600. Is that too cheap for him, or is that a fair price for Wembanyama?
To me, it's right there still, but the matchup isn't good. Tonight, Wembanyama for me would be more of a GPP option. And a lot of people are going to use him anyway because he's the flashy toy that we have in this league. But the Knicks actually defend those power forwards and centers pretty well, and they're a slow-paced team. Also, something we have to consider, this team, and we got crushed in the betting Discord on Fantasy Guru because I had 2 of my 3 bets from that Pacers-Spurs game. That was like a 38-point rout the entire time, and the Spurs just got handled. Now, what Popovich did was they were coming off a back-to-back, so they streamlined the minutes, and they got blown out. But still, the Knicks are favored by 10 in this game, which is really weird to see the Knicks favored by double digits in this one. So for me, Wembanyama, go after more of a GPP because you could get Mitchell Robinson in foul trouble. Once that happens, it'll be easier for Wemby to produce. For me, though, am I going to be building around this guy? Is he going to be in my core 4? Probably not.
Well, and you say the price is fairly solid.
It's right there, Kyle. If he starts going up to that 9K range, I'm going to have to pick him in high-octane environments. Popovich isn't just going to keep him out there for reps if this Spurs team is getting blown out, and that's something that we're going to have to look at on a day-by-day basis.
All right, early on, we're 2 weeks in. Sometimes, like a DraftKings or a FanDuel, they kind of
it feels like we're like 5 months in already.
Yeah, no, only 2 weeks. Sometimes, like a DraftKings and FanDuel, they struggle to catch up to the minutes or to a role, and we see guys continually underpriced early on. Is there anybody fulfilling that spot thus far this season?
So I'll give you a name, and he hasn't been crushing his price point when it comes to that 5X return, but someone who was just scanning DraftKings today, Kyle Kuzma. Let's not forget, while Jordan Poole's going to take a lot of shots, pretty much every one under the sun, at the same time, when it comes to Kyle Kuzma, he's this team's second option. Gives you points and boards, and also this team's moves at a rapid pace, so the possessions will be in his favor for the majority of his games because this team is one of the fastest, if not the fastest moving team in the league. And if he's going to stick in that 7K to 7,500, most nights I'm going to be going after him. It's nice and cheap, and for a second option on a high-octane offensive team, I like it. When it starts going up, when he's getting deep double-doubles soon enough, and it starts going up to that 8K plus range, then we're going to have to make different decisions.
Kind of the secondary option if you're into hoops, and I don't know who would leave the Warriors for this, but Sacramento, Justin, the Kings, they're off to a slow start this season. They were one of the better teams in the West last year, but it just hasn't happened yet. Talk to us about their struggles and what's going on with De'Aaron Fox and who's going to fill in there due to his injury.
Yeah, they don't play any defense. They're another team that they're going to be. And look, we talk about, here's a perfect example from the 2000s, those Dallas Mavericks teams, that it would be a race to 120, but they would also be giving up 118 on the side. And that's the problem. You got to be shooting well. And this team has just been up and down like a roller coaster ride. De'Aaron Fox being out, it seemed like he was going to be out for a while, but now it seems like we're in this day-by-day movement of whether or not he's going to play. Regardless, though, you see other guys like Davion Mitchell on the ball a little bit more, Kevin Huerter on the ball. But guys, from a fantasy standpoint, we can't really put full trust into Harrison Barnes and Huerter and Malik Monk, who I grabbed in a few of my season-long leagues. They're just all so up and down. It's been so hard to really figure it out. To me, if by default I'd go with a Kevin Huerter type who we know can shoot and also will have a little bit more control with the ball with no Fox. But man, you just look at these stat lines and it's just been up and down and really outside of Sabonis. And that's why this team ultimately has struggled. If they're not going to defend, they got to be hitting shots or getting in the lane.
Justin, over in our chat room, we have a question from Hal, and kind of talking about road trips for NBA teams and how long does a road trip have to be before you start fading players from a road trip? I was looking Miami. Miami's like in Memphis tonight. It's the first of 4 straight on the road. 9 of their next 10 are on the road. Things like long road trips. We'll see this. Like, I know Chicago leaves the Windy City for like 2 weeks every year because of the circus coming into town. And, we'll see the Knicks or the Celtics, these East Coast teams make their West Coast jaunt. Road teams, and probably more for DFS, when is that point where you start saying, okay, the road's going to have an effect on some of their results?
So you bring up Miami as a good example. Who hasn't won a game on the road yet this year. They're 0-3. Part of this road trip that they're going on right now, they've got very fast-paced offenses, and they're more slow-moving, so they're going to be running a lot. Guys, here's the thing that they have. So on the 11th and the 12th, they have Atlanta and then San Antonio. That is going to be a very tough back-to-back from a pace standpoint, but then it gets even worse because 2 days later, to end their road trip, to end this whole road trip, they're in Charlotte, who moves at a very fast pace as well. So I'm thinking by that Charlotte game, I'm going to be looking at some of those Charlotte players that I maybe normally wouldn't attack Miami's midcourt. And Jimmy Butler's great. He's a well-conditioned player. But at that point, that's when I'm going to be looking at the Mark Williams of the world to take out Bam Adebayo. And I think Miami tires out by the time they hit Charlotte, who moves very, very fast. Guys, a lot of my analysis is very pace-centric. And that's because, A, I'm watching these games. I'm seeing how fast these teams move. But B, and I think I said this on one of our live streams we did weeks ago, pace produces possessions. And those possessions are going to get us paid. So add that 4th P right there.
And it goes for hockey. It goes for NFL. It goes for the NBA. Baseball doesn't really have pace, but you're for the DFS player in all 3 of those sports, paying attention to pace. And all of our write-ups each and every day at Fantasy Guru really pound home this idea of pace.
Right.
So if you're playing those 3 sports, you're going to want to pay attention to that. One more thing for me, injuries. Jamal Murray, hamstring in Denver. Robert Williams, knee surgery in Portland. What's the fallout for Denver and Portland? Any fantasy angles to play there with those 2 guys out?
I'm just shaking my head with Robert Williams, the Time Lord. The guy just can't stay healthy. It's one lower body injury after another. So really, when it comes to Portland, with what we're seeing from DeAndre Ayton, he's going to be playing 30 plus for the most part. And then when it comes to those games that we think that Portland are going to get blown out, maybe in a GPP, Jabari Walker would be an option that could get you a volume production in 15 to 20 minutes in that regard. We saw him the other night, actually grab multiple steals, blocked a shot, and I'm looking for that production in every category, even if it's 1 block and 2 steals and 5 points. All of that adds up, and that's what I'm looking at, especially the defensive stats, fellas, because when you see the defensive stats, those right there are going to be more justification to play those players and give them. Defense gives you more minutes. So that's the Portland situation. Unfortunately, on the Denver side, Nikola Jokic just has so much darn usage with the ball that Jamal Murray, for the most part in this offense, is the off guard anyway. So you're going to see Reggie Jackson handle the rock a little bit more. The problem with Reggie Jackson is you can't have him shooting the basketball unless he's open for a set shot. So when it comes to him just standing there, that's fine. But if he's trying to create, I want the ball out of his hands immediately. It has to happen. So unfortunately, there's no real beneficiary when it comes to shots or even time with the ball because of Jokic running the offense for the most part. But someone to watch out for on the waiver wire, maybe besides a Jackson, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Regular starter, the guy is a great defender as well. Little up and down with his scoring, but he'll take a few shots, even shots from deep, and he'll even grab you a few boards and get you a steal as well.
14 games tipping off tonight, starting at 7 Eastern. Those first set of games, last set of games get going at 10 o'clock Eastern. Not only is it a huge DFS night, Justin, I know you guys will have cheat sheets, write-ups, all that, but tonight is another watch with Justin Wednesday night, right?
Yeah, watch along Wednesday. Tonight starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. Guys, come watch some basketball with us. Kyle, put the boy to bed. Ray, walk the dog 1,000 miles like you do every day, and just come right into the DFS NBA Discord.
I don't have the league pass though. I'm left watching the Knicks and the Spurs. I can't flip around all these games.
Oh, Guy, it feels so bad for you. That's going to be a fun game. But guys, it's going to be great. Just going to be giving my reactions. I'm going to pick 2 games. I try to not go with the nationally televised game all the time because other people are watching it. And I want to hear from all of you in the DFS NBA Discord. So make sure that you go in there starting at 7 p.m. I'll be in there for a few hours. I'll also be talking about bets and everything. Got the write-up coming out a little bit later on too, Kyle. But DFS NBA Discord channel, watch along Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm also going to post a note in Discord reminding everyone. It's been fun.
Looking forward to it. Justin, thanks for the visit here today on FSD. And do it again next week, okay? Good luck, man.
Thank you guys so much for having me again.
He is the man with the ball. He is the man who talks the court. Justin Fensterman with us, helping us on the DFS and the season-long side. Again, thanks to, I think it was Hal sending the question. If you ever have questions, when we bring on a guest or Ray and I are, mumbling on about something, feel free to send them in there. I know Ray's been very active, answering some of those questions when we can off air. So you can check those out in the comments section. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, the audio version is up pretty well 20 to 30 minutes right after we conclude things here on the video side. Big thank you to everybody on the Facebook, x.com, YouTube, all that stuff for following us. But again, subscribing to the audio podcast, make sure that you never miss us. So you can catch us each and every day there. We get rolling at 11 a.m. Eastern. And Ray, we go for about 50 minutes to an hour. And what do you know? We're at that point right now. So I guess we're probably done for the day. What's the rest of your Wednesday look like outside of tuning in for some NBA tonight?
Yeah, I might actually do that. Do you have access to Discord yourself, Kyle? I don't even know. Do you?
Oh, yeah, I think I can. I don't use it too often. I am one of the lone people not in Discord. Ray's always in Discord, though.
Yeah, I unfortunately am. Your name is probably Jeff Manns in there, right?
Probably is. I'm probably
dirty comments
or something.
My Wednesday, just to say it too, people can go to youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. That's the home base for the YouTube account. You click on the About tab at the top, and it'll show you all of the ins and outs of all the offerings we have. It'll show you the links to Spotify and iTunes. You can obviously just put Fantasy Sports Daily in there too if you want to search for that, so you can have the podcast. The rest of my day-to-day, after I get off here, I'll continue to work on my Week 10 breakdown, that huge article where I cover all the game action of the week and kind of take a global perspective to augment all the specific articles we have at the site, talking about positions and matchups and all of that. And then I'm on with Jeff Manns on Wednesdays on the Elite Sports Show. That's on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 Eastern Time. I'm on every Wednesday, so I'll be on with Jeff doing that a little later. And then I'll dive back into doing some more work on this matchup piece, Kyle. It's a monster.
And then Thursday morning, he'll be back with us. And tomorrow, we'll get you set for the Panthers and the Bears. Ryan Clifford, as always, jumping on for a little DFS showdown talk. And we'll look ahead to the upcoming week of English Premier League. I had one of my most hideous and awful weeks of all last week in the English Premier League. So me and Ani Sridhar, we'll sit down for a few minutes, take a look ahead. It does sound like Erling Haaland going to be okay to play this week. That's kind of a big situation coming out of last week. Captaining him, not the right move. Didn't work out at all. We'll see if people are back on board for this week. So a little bit of soccer, football, and whatever else. Maybe we'll get some baseball signings with free agency. We will break it all down as only we can. It is Fantasy Sports Daily. Kyle Elfrink, Ray Flowers. We are powered by FantasyGuru.com. We will catch you on Thursday.